Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to Circling Seattle Sports on Converge Media. Bel is back in case you can't see here. Once again, yes, we have, I think we talked about it the last few weeks. Seahawks not doing too well last week. The mixed week of beating Denver on Monday night and then getting throttled by the 49ers on the road. Mm-hmm. The Mariners dealing with a decent amount of injuries to an extent. The Sounders, they flair for the dramatic, I would say. We went over the storm season recap last week. The rain faced a treacherous road trip. Kraken training camp is currently taking place. Mm-hmm. So, trying to get back into the groove of things, because there's a point in time where it's like, oh, everyone's kind of firing on all cylinders. And then to an extent, we kind of slowed down. So with that all being said, if you saw it, I made a little thing here before the episode went live, made a little post. We were going to do some ticket giveaways to a couple events happening over the course of this next week, mostly this weekend, but that'll be unveiled as the episode goes on. So if you saw that post and you're here for that, got to tune into the show. Diving into things, tough matchup. Seahawks come back home after, again, that throttling on the road down in Levi's Stadium. And, they came out pretty decent, but things didn't really end as they'd hoped for, Bel, as we look over to our Seahawks segment.
Yesterday on September 25th, of course, it was a battle of the birds. The Hawks played the Falcons, and unfortunately, they had a chance at the end there, and they just couldn't come up with anything. So they lost that one 27-23. We have some offensive players of the game here. I went with Tyler Lockett, and of course, there were some flashier plays on offense. DK Metcalf's touchdown. Mm-hmm. But I just like the consistency of Tyler Lockett. He was 9 for 11 and got 76 yards, a total of 76 yards. So I just think consistency is going to be important for this team, and Tyler Lockett has proven to do that as one of our captains.
That's a good point. That's a very good point, that consistency. He's not necessarily consistent. He's been pretty solid since the later part of last season. I went with Rashad Penny. I'm not typically a guy that's you see those posts. It's who's got the best drip uniform wise, or who looks at the black gloves and the black tape. I was like, oh, who's this guy running the rock? I thought he looked good. But 66 yards rushing early on. It looked like Seattle moved the ball relatively well. And there was a play that got called back because of penalty late in that game that actually Geno Smith threw the interception on 4th and 25 or something. Yeah. It was 4th and decently long. But there was, I believe it was a screenplay where Rashad broke it down within the 10. And I was like, oh, shoot, they're going to do it. And then it gets called back because of a holding. So I thought he had a good game, but you make a really good point, especially now that he is wearing the captain's C on his chest. Tyler Lockett's been a guy that's, even before this year, just consistently, whether the offense is in a rut, Tyler Lockett's always a guy that's been a solid receiver, and he still gets disrespected. I saw some TikTok channel where, don't get me wrong, Amon-Ra St. Brown is having a great year so far. Yeah. But to think that he's better than Tyler Lockett, it's just ridiculous to me. And they're just like, oh, easy, Tyler Lockett. I'm like, the disrespect for Tyler Lockett goes too far sometimes.
It does.
Not even sometimes. More often than normal. Yeah. So I think that's a really solid pick there. And then we didn't necessarily disagree on the defensive side of the ball. The defense had a tough day yesterday.
They did.
Way too often it seemed like guys were breaking open. There was just no resistance in a sense. But this guy continues to make an impact, as you highlighted.
Yeah. So last week, unfortunately, I wasn't here to speak on it, but he stood out to me on defense last week as well, with that blocked field goal that turned into a touchdown for Michael Jackson. And this week he went ahead, had, like you detailed here, 1 pass deflection and an interception. So, again, with consistency, if you can come out and do this every week and apply pressure every week, then you're going to be a solid guy.
And it's tough with the cornerback room because if we look at the inactives here, we'll just go over to the inactives. There's three veteran cornerbacks on the inactives list, game day inactive. That's not ideal. And I know that, Woolen is a guy that, coming into this season has been viewed as like a raw talent. He's going to be a guy that needs to be molded like a couple of products in the defensive back room for Pete Carroll over the years. But I think you make plays. That's all that really matters. That's how you get noticed, especially in games like this. I know that the interception came before the half and such, but making that big play against the 49ers to really help get you the only points you score in that game,
literally
showing up and again, finding ways to make plays throughout the week, whether it, that's how some guys can really get started. So, again, with how difficult the game was defensively, Mariota kind of did what he wanted. There was that one time where he fumbled on the read option, but I think outside of that, he had a pretty decent game. Yes. And he's had a decent year so far. Atlanta almost came back against the Rams the week before this. So I don't think they're a bad team, but considering everything and how you came out pretty decent offensively, I really thought you should have won this game. Just self-inflicted stuff. And that's what happens to bad teams. I know you kind of ride on the high of beating Denver on Monday night. It's an exciting game. But then I talked to a few people heading into the Niners game. It's like things are going to come back to reality to an extent. And you're seeing that. So you just, bad teams, if you can get good coaching out of it, you can kind of work around it. I think that's what with Atlanta, they have a poor roster. Yeah. And they got coached well. I think their coaching staff does a great job of, using Cordero Patterson has historically been a kick returner. And now you see him gashing runs, great speed. They've got Kyle Pitts, Drake London. Yep. And, Marcus Mariota's been a kind of a journeyman. So they're using what they've got. And they did it well. They adjusted. They were able. Late in the game, I didn't see as much running the ball from Seattle, not as well as they did in the first half. Yeah. So, good teams adjust. So, it's a tough one. But again, when we look at this team, we're not expecting much anyway. So it's like some of these, I'm not even as disappointed as I have been in past years, because when you're a playoff team, you're like, you lose to a team where you've got a worse roster. The point was made, though, that Seattle had like 400 yards of offense on 69 plays. You did pretty decent on third down. You should win that game.
Yeah, but Gino did over 300 again, didn't he?
Yeah, Gino had a pretty solid game. That interception at the end is 4th and 25. You got to throw the ball up. I understand that. But it's just more so of the penalties and just stuff like that, and the defense being ripped apart. It's there are going to be holes on bad teams, and they were exploited. So I don't know, a tough one, but again, I'm not, and now you got a probably tougher contest against the Detroit team that, like we talked about before we started, has some pretty solid talent.
Yeah, I think there are some good takeaways, though, from this loss. I saw a lot of our tight ends getting the ball, and it just felt like it was distributed kind of evenly out there. So it's nice to see guys getting touches, and then who knows who might break out and have a good game. So
and it is we've got 14 games left to play in a long season, and I that's something that I did think about. You go home, and a lot of the headlines I saw from the Seahawks app or even the ESPN were the tight end production, and that was something I was looking into going into the season, because you've got Noah Fant and Will Dissly and Kobe Parkinson. All of them bring different things to the table. Parkinson's like 6'8". Dissly, the beginning of his career, had some great offensive performances, really looked like a really mobile tight end, a guy who could run, be a yards after catch kind of guy. And then he ruptured his patella tendon and kind of been a blocking guy. Noah Fant is a really athletic tight end. So they all bring different things. And it was weird because it felt like, I'm not necessarily discrediting Russell, but before this year, you didn't see as much tight end production, which is interesting to me. And go back to Jimmy Graham. When Seattle had Jimmy Graham, he wasn't really properly used until his last year in Seattle. And it's like, you've got a guy who's basically, I remember he argued that he was a wide receiver when he was looking for a contract with New Orleans. He basically was a receiver, and you couldn't use him properly. So it's just interesting to see this tight end production now. And so I thought that was a good point.
Yeah. So hopefully they take some good things out of this very close loss. As we head into some injury news here, I know that you reported on some of it here, but Shelby Harris was out, Justin Coleman and Joey Blunt were doubtful, and then questionable was Quandre Diggs, who sounded like looked good enough to play on Friday.
And yeah, he was good.
Yeah. So inactives as we head over to some more here. Shelby Harris, Artie Burns, Justin Coleman, Sidney Jones, Joey Blunt, Jake Kernan, and Derek Young. And then injuries against Atlanta. Travis Homer bruises his ribs. Pete Carroll says that Homer did not break his ribs, but there are complications of the injury. So hopefully he's able to heal quite quickly there.
I mean, yeah, that's, you know, I know I talked about it, but having Burns and Coleman out,
yeah,
again, Burns was a guy I was excited about this offseason because he's got a little bit of history with some staff that Seattle brought in. Coleman had a career year in Seattle. He's been decent since then. But again, it's like you can't have three of those guys in your cornerback room out. You can't. It's really difficult, and you're getting banged up. Shelby Harris had a personal matter to attend to. It's just really tough. I mean, getting banged up this early, Jamal Adams being out for the year,
right?
Not ideal, you know. Yeah. So to see all this happen is just pretty. It's unfortunate, already considering that you're already facing an uphill battle.
Yeah, you don't know what the potential of the team can be when you don't have your roster. So.
Yeah.
Moving on to some team notes here. On September 20th, Geno Smith is going to trademark his quote, guys. They wrote me off. I ain't right back, though. That will be trademarked by Geno Smith. And this is not a joke because I double-checked with Chuck before we started this episode.
Do you have some thoughts you'd like to share on that? I mean, I know it's different, but NIL, you know, people are capitalizing off their likeness. And there was the whole last year, let Russ cook, all those shirts. I see those in Goodwill nowadays.
Where they belong.
Yeah. So it's always funny to like ride the emotion off of like moments like that. Like Breaking T does a good job with, you know, last year with the Mariners, Dylan Moore. The Mariners came back. There was Sleepless in Seattle. It was a photo of Dylan Moore. Yeah. There's Abraham Toro shirts that said Toro time. So I don't know. What do you it seems like a lot of people tried to ride the moment of something before it goes away. I feel like we already might be away from it now.
I completely agree. After these last 2 weeks, I think that I don't know if it has very much validity there.
I wouldn't buy a shirt. I'm sorry, Gino. I wouldn't buy the shirt.
Well,
yeah.
I always thought trademarking quotes was kind of interesting, but hey, Gino, do you? If you think that people are going to continue to write you off, then hey, this might be a very accurate quote for you. So moving on to the September 21st, former safety Cam Chancellor listed as one of the 129 modern era nominees for the Pro Football Hall of Fame's class of 2023. Just some accolades here on Cam. He is a Super Bowl champion, a 2-time second team All-Pro, 4-time Pro Bowler, 12 interceptions, and 9 forced fumbles on his career. Obviously very deserving.
It's a tough slope. You know, you look at that list of 129, that's a lot. And, you know, obviously you can make it if you're not first ballot. You know, there's some guys on that list that I'm sure are first ballot. It's tough with the Hall of Fame because they're, you know, the criteria, wherever. It's like, did you change the game? If we're arguing it from that point, what legacy you left, Cam Chancellor was a pretty impactful guy. You see guys like a Derwin James, who are built like linebackers and are playing safety and are able to have that agility, have that sort of skill set at the safety position, be a real box guy. I mean, all you have to do is type in Cam Chancellor into YouTube and you can see what kind of guy he was, blowing up offensive linemen, which isn't easy to do. But also, I mean, Super Bowl 48, smacking the goofy out of Wes Welker and setting the tone for that game, but also being a guy who is like a silent leader in that Legion of Boom. Yes. All three of those prime Legion of Boom members brought their own thing. Earl Thomas was, I mean, Richard was kind of the mouthpiece, right? He did the most talking. Earl did some here and there, but Richard kind of, you know, all of those guys brought different things. Richard, tall, lanky cornerback,
very confident,
backed up his talk, helped in the run game. Even in watching these games this year, a lot of people have talked about, you know, cornerbacks trying to set the edge. Richard Sherman, like, set some of the tone for that. Earl Thomas might have been an undersized guy, really rangy, could play like a center fielder. Cam Chancellor built like they all brought different things. Mm-hmm. If we're arguing for Cam's case, I would certainly say there's nobody really like him. Even Derwin James I think he's a solid safety, but he's not Cam Chancellor. It's tough because you want to be unbiased about something like this.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's first ballot, but I think I would give him a yes eventually reaching the Hall of Fame. I know some guys have had to wait years and years and years.
Yes.
I would hope that wouldn't have to happen, but you'd have to think some of those members from the Legion of Boom make it because, you look at Richard and the way, even I don't want to say his name because he's a prisoner, but Brandon Browner, Byron Maxwell, those guys, changed the way that referees call things. I mean, like the 5-yard rule for cornerbacks and wide receivers. You couldn't bump and run like they did. They used to, and they changed that. The NFL changed that.
So literally an impact to the game.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to get at. And I kind of mouth vomited everywhere about it. But that's my point. So I would think yes. It probably won't be first ballot, unfortunately. You'd like to see that, but there are some guys that if we could look at the list, I'm sure. But yeah, I think he does make it.
Well, we'll be sure to notify you guys as soon as we know here. On the 22nd, some news on Jamal Adams. He had successful surgery to repair his torn quadricep tendon and is back home recovering. Of course, as we stated, he's out for the season on his recovery. Will be greatly missed on the field. We move on to some league news here. The league may force the Washington Commanders owner out. Multiple owners think consideration will be given to convincing Dan Snyder to sell the Washington Commanders or flat out removing him. So also on more exciting Super Bowl news, and if you have missed Rihanna like I have, she teased a Super Bowl 2023 halftime show. So it was actually announced that she would be doing the 2023 halftime show. But just her latest Instagram feeds and rumored it. She had I think her hands holding the football.
It's literally her hand holding a ball. It was really interesting to me because when I was at training camp for the Kraken here over the past week, it was like Taylor Swift was going to be the one who was headlining it. And a couple of media members were talking about it. And I was like, I have to admit, I'm not someone who puts a lot of stake into the halftime show. I mean, I'll watch it, but I know like there are Super Bowl parties, right? People are like, I'm just here for the halftime show. I'm like, okay, make it a big deal. I love Rihanna. I won't disagree with that. So I will take that over Taylor Swift. I won't lie. It's just really interesting to see how it was all like, it's always a spectacle each year when it's like trying to figure out who it's going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not mad at it.
I'm overjoyed. I've missed her. More news here regarding the Pro Bowl. The Pro Bowl is being changed after being a consistent set of, the Pro Bowl game since 1951. So
within Hawaii for a long time has changed venues. They had the thing, I don't know if you remember it a few years ago, where it was like Coach Prime versus Coach Michael Irvin, and then Chris Carter, Randy Moss, and they had those ugly neon uniforms. And they've tried to change things around, and we've talked about the Pro Bowl here before.
We have, not very thrilled to watch it. I don't even think we did tune in. So
no, I remember that we ignored it. It's just really interesting to see how the NFL is trying to, draw some more ratings in and get more interest in it with what they're doing now.
Yeah. So it is being renamed to the Pro Bowl Games because it's going to be a week long of skills competitions, capped off by a flag football game that will take place on February 5th. Flag football, that was interesting to me. It feels like a digression, but I could understand it for injury purposes.
Yeah, I know that it's tough because I remember, I think we were talking about it. The Pro Bowl used to be hosted after the Super Bowl so that the Super Bowl participants could participate. I remember before we started, Bel pretty loudly, it was like flag football in this questioning tone. I understand it. I don't know if this is going to help. The skills some of the skills competitions are cool, I will say, like the accuracy stuff. Flag football, I don't care. The Pro Bowl games just kind of seems like it's like they're taking field day from middle school and making that's what it sounds like. So I don't know. You look at with baseball's got the home run derby. We turned into the home run derby after we recorded one of the shows here. The dunk contest in the NBA.
That's a hit.
The skills competitions, like I don't know. The other all-star competitions have their things. I remember in the NHL they used to have goalie races where the goalie, you see how big gear they would race. They stop now because of injuries, but stuff like that. There's things that you could tune into that there's nothing in the NFL that I really say, oh, I'm going to tune in for this competition specifically.
Yeah, sure.
Like I would watch the home run derby even if Julio wasn't in it.
Yeah.
So you got to find, I don't have the answers to what makes the Pro Bowl games watchable.
Yeah.
But I'll give it a chance this year, see what it's about.
Yeah.
If they disappoint me.
I think that's probably why people will tune in, just to see what the difference is from before. So we shift back over to our Seahawks here. They sit at a 1-2 record for the season currently. They are 4th in the NFC West. That number one standing short-lived. I'm sorry.
It's like Gino's quote.
And then looking ahead, they will be playing on Sunday, October 2nd at the Detroit Lions. That is a 10 a.m. game.
Early morning, and I don't know. I don't feel too strongly about that game. But away from that now, we come back to our Mariners, who probably would like to get away from any memory of their road trip that they just went on, a 10-game road trip.
Sure would.
We talked about it even from last week to the week before that, because it's been a 10-game road trip. Man, it was not kind to our friends. So over the past week, we record from Monday to Monday. So anything Monday night, we have to include in the next show.
Right.
September 19th at the Angels. So a 4-game set. The Mariners lose the first 3. They salvage game 4 in a 9-1 win. 2 players of the game here with a lot of offense. First baseman Ty France, 2 hits, 2 runs, and 4 RBIs, including a solo home run. And then Carlos Santana, Slamtana, 2 hits, 2 runs, 5 RBIs, living up to the nickname of Slamtana with a grand slam as well as a solo homer. So Carlos continues to slam.
Yeah.
Then the Mariners head up to Oakland to take on the Athletics for a few games, a 3-game set to be exact, and things don't get much easier there. They lose the first 2 games. September 20th, 4-1 loss. Play of the game once again, Carlos Santana, 1 hit and the only run for Seattle. And then September 21st at the Athletics, a 2-1 loss, a narrow 1-run loss. Play of the game, pinch hitter Luis Torrens. So Luis, in his first game back from AAA, in his first plate appearance, hits a solo homer. 1 hit, 1 run, 1 RBI, provides the only offense for Seattle there. And another, you can see, I've complained about it essentially all year, the offensive inconsistency. You see the 9-run game and then back-to-back 1-run games.
Oh my gosh, don't even get me started with inconsistency, because you're still moving on to what I thought was another very disappointing series.
Yeah. So wrapping up the Athletic series, again, talk about the inconsistency. A 9-5 win on the 22nd. 2 players of the game there. Center fielder Jared Kelnick. Yes, Kelnick's back, and we'll get to that in a minute. 2 hits, 2 runs, 2 RBIs, and a walk. Second player of the game. This is for Liv. I'll just leave it at that. Our photographer, Liv Lyons. Second baseman Adam Frazier. 2 hits, 3 RBIs, and 4 total bases. Can't argue with 3 RBIs, though. That's pretty solid.
Yeah.
But yes, he lures the first few games of that series. Salvage the last game, not exactly a decent recipe. And then, as Bel mentioned, with the difficult series, head to Kansas City. I mean, look at this. Anaheim, Oakland, Kansas City. Those are some of the worst teams in all of the American League, let alone baseball.
Those are teams that we were sitting here a couple of weeks ago saying, these are likely going to turn out well. Yeah.
We were looking at this at the beginning of September, even late August, and you're like, okay, it's tough right now because Baltimore's on a hot streak. Toronto and Tampa Bay are still hanging around. But those latter 2 teams are supposed to play each other a bunch, and you should be able to take advantage of a bad schedule.
Right. It didn't happen that way.
No. We look at this Royal Series, September 23rd, a 5-1 loss. Again, the 1 run. Player of the game, catcher Cal Raleigh. Cal, 1 hit, 1 RBI, and a 1 run and 1 walk. September 24th at the Royals, a 6-5 win. So they come back after being down. Cal Raleigh hits a pinch hit 2-run homer to finish his day. 2 hits, 1 run, 3 RBIs. Hitter hits a double off the wall to give the Mariners the go-ahead run. Andres Munoz comes in and shuts it down. The Mariners get that win. So it's like, okay, you won the second game of the series. Maybe you could win the third game.
Yeah. And it looked that way for a while.
Yeah, September 25th at the Royals, a 13-12 loss. That's almost a football score. Player of the game, right fielder Mitch Haniger, 3 hits, 2 runs, 2 RBIs. Yeah, that September 25th game, the Mariners had an 8-run inning. I'm sitting there as a fan at the Seahawks game on Sunday. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll post the score later. I won't have to worry about the rest of that game. Service is bad inside of Lumen Field, by the way. It's like an hour later, and I look down at my phone, and the MLB notifications pop in, and
I
all of a
wondered
sudden,
if we didn't get those then.
we're
'cause-
down.
Yeah.
And I'm like, huh. And it wasn't anger, it wasn't sadness. It was just more, again, disappointment, considering how rough this road trip has been. You know, as we've seen it go on the little scroller here. The Mariners go 3-7 over the course of their 10-game road trip. Like you said, should have been an easy one. I don't have answers for you. The pitching, which has carried this team for the longest time, has been hitting duds every once in a while here, and the offense does you no favor in terms of run support. So those two together, those two negatives don't make a positive. This isn't math. Well, not that kind of math, at least. And it's been really unfortunate. I know technically the Mariners still have really high playoff chances and should essentially break that drought. We'll get to that being official probably next week. But regardless, now it's not necessarily at this point in the season, you know, I know that we should just be grateful for having the drought end, but at the same time, knowing that you can take the number 1 wild card spot, host 3 games at home in front of raucous crowds, in front of the city that's been starved for that, knowing that you've got that opportunity and it's like slipping away, and you're just kind of like, After the 6-5 win against the Royals, J.P. Crawford's like, you know, we've got a pretty good group. We're like in a good spot mentally, despite what social media says because of the road trip. You know, we're good in here. And then that happened. What I was upset about after that loss wasn't necessarily the 11-run inning that they gave up, was the fact that comment was made. It was like, oh yeah, we're good.
Are you?
What the hell was that?
Yeah.
I know Scott Service said that after that game, that horrific loss, they had a team meeting. You have to hold yourself accountable for a really, really ugly loss and an ugly road trip. You know, now we look at this upcoming homestand and you play again some of the worst teams in the American League. Does it matter? I don't know if it matters, because with the way you've been playing, I don't think it, matters if you've got certain guys. Even with Suarez and Julio out, you should be winning these games.
Yeah.
Considering the roster you're playing, whoever the hell Oakland is fighting in the stadium to play their games. The Royals, I mean, you look at some of the pitching matchups that we post, you think, wow, okay. You've had offensive inconsistency issues all year. That's on the hitting coach. So he should be out after this year, regardless of what happens. The pitching all year has carried you. So for them to hit a couple lumps, I'm not going to be upset about, because they've been your driving force. Yeah. But it's really frustrating to see all this. But now they've got the off day today, and you've got to flush it before tomorrow against the Rangers. And we'll take a second here to take a breather, because it's all anger. But tomorrow, before the Mariners take on the Rangers at T-Mobile Park, I'm sure if you follow, we're on the Converge platforms, obviously, so I'm sure you've seen it by now. But if you haven't, Baseball Beyond Borders, the Reconciliation Tour, I believe the film is premiering tomorrow at T-Mobile Park. Yes. I think limited tickets are available. Mm-hmm. So we're going to play you that trailer right now and take a minute to decompress from the anger of that road trip.
Baseball is a beautiful game, especially when played in community. Earlier this summer, Baseball Beyond Borders took a powerful, eye-opening journey through the heart of the South, which included baseball, civil rights, and reconciliation. Our young kings hosted a baseball clinic at Jackson State University in Jackson, Mississippi, and hit the road to Montgomery, Alabama by way of the historic Edmund Pettus Bridge to visit the Equal Justice Initiative Museum and Memorial, all in an effort to ground our kings in their history and find serenity in the sport they love to preserve the cultural legacy. Join Baseball Beyond Borders on September 27th for the premiere of our film, Reconciliation Tour, at T-Mobile Park's Ellis Pavilion from 3 to 5 p.m. Hear from those on the front line as well as special guests as we elevate our promise to bring healing through play. For tickets or to donate, visit baseballbeyond.org or check our social media platforms.
That'll be a pretty special film, and excited to just see it. I won't be there at T-Mobile Park tomorrow. A friend over here will be there, so it will. I'm sure people have already commented on some of the trailers. Sorry, I lost the word there, but I know they'll be there in attendance. That should be really fun to see that. Having hearing from some of the people who were down on that tour. Knowing that Dan Wilson was there and the moments that were shared there, it seems like it's just really special and a really well put together trailer. So you can only imagine what the actual film itself will be like. So excited to see that take place. That's tomorrow, September 27th, Ellis Pavilion. If you don't have tickets, there might be some available still. But regardless, I know the Converge will have that available, that film as a whole coming soon. So we look over to players of the week here. Is a tough week, and again, with the frustration of that road trip, it's like, do you want to give anybody?
No. I was hard. I went
Bel went with a tough love route. I went with Jared Kelnick, just considering how he's been since coming up. 16 plate appearances, 6 hits, 5 runs, 3 doubles, 1 homer, 2 RBIs, 12 total bases, 2 walks, a 375 batting average, a 444 on base percentage, a whopping 750 slugging percentage. I mean, 3 doubles, God. And a 1.194 OPS. The Jared Kelnick situation is very tough because there's been a lot of criticism on him, with considering that he traditionally is a center fielder, and you've got Julio and the emergence of Julio Rodriguez. There's the comparisons. There's the expectation with him being a really highly touted prospect from the Mets in that trade that sent Robbie Cano and Edwin Diaz over. There's really high expectations for Jared Kelnick. We've talked about this throughout the year. He is 23 years old. Baseball prime is until 27. And the same sort of thing happened last year. He made his debut last year, struggled. His first hit was a homer. I think he had a 2-homer game. But he kind of struggled until he hit September. And then September, Jared Kelnick was something else. It was like, whoa. Because he's had trouble with his batting stance. He kind of changes it up too much. It's like, why are you changing it? Just relax. Stay. Right. And I mean, it's September. Jared Kelnick, again, he's back and he's doing stuff like that. He's contributing. I joked with my dad and a friend of mine is like, they joked, it's like, he's going to be the savior. And he's really been helpful. I don't know if savior is the word, but he's been a contributing member of this team. Trust me, I liked Jay Lamb. He's a Husky, but he shouldn't have been kept likely over Jared.
Yeah.
He's worked great at bats, and that's what people want to see is better at bats. It doesn't have to be a homer every time. Just want to be just a better overall approach. And I've rooted for Jared the entire time. Some of the stuff's been frustrating. He gets people like, oh, he's way too uptight. But there are a lot of expectations around him. So I've been told I've been uptight in the past. And I've tried to work on that so I can see where he's going with that. But I don't like closing the door on this guy just yet.
No,
and
I agree.
I know that the run last year meant a lot to him. Obviously meant a lot to a lot of people, but for him to be involved in that is special. And, if you look that last game where Kyle Seager retired, but they showed the dugout and Jared, because the Mariners, they lost that game regardless. But once they find out that there's no playoffs, there's a video of him in the dugout just weeping in general tears. I know this means a lot to him. So for him to be back with the big league club, to be contributing, it's awesome. It's really awesome. So I just really hope that he can continue this and really continue to contribute to this ball club. So
did you see the comparison in his attitude to Kawhi Leonard?
I mean, if it works like Kawhi Leonard's career track, go ahead, man. I don't care.
I just think people are going to have something to say all the time. And so he's doing well. And so now you're going to criticize the way he's celebrating or not celebrating. Yeah.
That's a good point. I think that's a really good point. It's like some people with some players, there's just always something to pick apart. So I think that's a good thing to mention. Speaking of good things, well, they're good now. As I read this, it won't be as good. For injury-related news, on the 22nd, Julio Rodriguez left the game against the Athletics with lower back tightness, so he continues to struggle with lower back issues. On the 23rd, Julio was placed on the 10-day injured list with a lower back strain. Once those 10 days are up, he can play the last few games of the regular season against Detroit, and we'll get to some updates on that. And then on the 25th of September, Jesse Winker left the game against the Royals with a left wrist bruise. He was hit by a pitch and actually drove a run in, but he had to leave that game with a bruise. So I haven't got anything official yet on Winker there. And, obviously follow us on social media. We'll update you as soon as we can on that. As Matt dropped the helpful little, I'm going the wrong way. I'm always struggling with the mirrored side of things right there. Social media. We look over to team-related news on the 21st. With Jared being back comes roster moves.
Of course.
So 4 moves happened. The team recalled outfielder Jared Kelnick from AAA Tacoma, as well as catcher Luis Torrens was selected from AAA Tacoma, with catcher Kurt Casale going on paternity leave. So good for that.
Congrats to him.
Outfielder Taylor Trammell was optioned to AAA Tacoma, and infielder/outfielder Jake Lamb was designated for assignment. On the 23rd, though, Trammell would be recalled from AAA Tacoma with the injury to Julio Rodriguez. Yes. So Taylor didn't go very far. Yes, so it's nice to see both Jared and Luis performing well again. I have to admit, Kurt Casale has been a little bit of a disappointment, as a trade deadline acquisition just hasn't really produced what you'd hope for as a backup catcher, and maybe Luis will take those reins from him. On the 24th, more sort of good news, the team officially extended right-handed pitcher Luis Castillo on a 5-year deal, pretty similar to Robbie Ray's deal. Seattle extends their
damn time.
Yeah, I know people have been waiting for this. Seattle extends their ace, which they acquired at the trade deadline, on a 5-year, $108 million. The deal has a 6-year vesting option that can take it up to $133 million. Essentially, basic wise, what that means is if he performs well, option. If he performs less, poor, worse of an option. The deal begins this upcoming year and runs through the year of 2027, with a player and club options for the 2028 season. If you've got good pitching, you're going to do well. And it's just funny. In some of the pregame pressers Scott has, I've paid attention to how he talks about Luis. Is just like, he's really excited. As a former catcher, I'm sure he's really excited to have the kind of pitcher that Luis is on this club. He's got great stuff. He's really exciting, and he's just really, like, you watch some of the videos post-game where those guys are celebrating, you see this big goofy grin on his face a lot of the time. So you can tell he's happy to be here, and just hoping that, we can give him some damn run support.
Yes.
And do well behind him. So that was, like Bel said, it's about damn time that happened. And Jerry DiPoto said it too. They had their press conference today, but he said this before, that there's a commitment to building a championship roster, and you are going to have a pitcher like Luis on your team if you're going to get to that sort of point anyway. So lesser news on the 24th as well. Jake Lamb declined his outright assignment and will become a free agent. I don't really understand that. If he could have elected to just be outrighted to Tacoma, he could still be on a playoff team. But now, since he's become a free agent, and I think it's past the deadline, he can't be part of a playoff team.
Do you think there's some saltiness to that?
I mean, he contributed here and there, but I really, he struggled. And a lot of the outside of the Castillo deal, I didn't understand a lot of the trades.
Yeah.
And, like, Matt Boyd's been solid, but Lamb and Casale, I'm just like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
So, again, he's a Husky, and he went to Blanchette. I went to O'Day, so I don't really feel very strongly about Blanchette, but he was a Husky. So I'm like, that's cool to see. He just didn't perform. Mm-hmm. And so at the time, you got to put the sentimentalism away. But yes, so before I continue to league news, I had to write it down here. I have to apologize. My memory isn't the best. We're going to give away 4 Mariners tickets total this upcoming homestand. 2 to game 162 against the Tigers on October 5th. Unfortunately, that start time hasn't been announced yet. It still says TBD, which is kind of weird.
Yeah.
But that's considering that the Mariners and Tigers played a doubleheader the day before. And that's the last game of the regular season. So game 162 is October 5th. 2 tickets to that. Lower bowl. I don't do upper bowl. So there'll be lower bowl tickets. And then, yes, that's a Wednesday, October 5th. That's the last game of the regular season. We'll be on site for that. We're gonna be with you all homestand for this Mariners. The closest they can clinch is Thursday. So we're going to, trust me, if you've been following us, how much this means to us, let alone the city. So we'll be with you all homestand. And then there are 2 tickets to game 159, October 2nd versus Oakland. That's a Sunday. So
that is a Sunday.
4 total tickets. We'll have more official rules on that within this upcoming week before those games actually take place. But bottom line, you have to be following us on Circling Seattle Sports. Matt, you put me back. Yep. Instagram, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, so you can be a part of that. We want to get people out in this building, regardless of if you win these tickets or not. If you can make these games, please do so. There are several games where there are value tickets for $10. Pack the building. I mean, I know there was all the excitement of last year, but the team has a much better chance this year at making it. They don't have to rely on as much. They've put themselves in a better position compared to where they were this time last year. So you're going to want to be a part of something special.
Mm-hmm.
I just get emotional talking about it. We won't do that. But 4 tickets to game 159 on October 2nd versus the Athletics, and 2 to game 162 against the Tigers on October 5th. Make sure you're following us on social media, Instagram at Circling Seattle Sports, Twitter at Circling Sports. If you put Circling Seattle Sports, though, you'll find us anyway. And Facebook, Circling Seattle Sports, as well as following us on Converge, obviously, here, or on our YouTube, Circling Seattle Sports. All ways that you can find out about that. So the only league notes is September 23rd. The Orioles are having a bank assess their sale of the team. Baltimore is bringing in Goldman Sachs to assess the club for a possible sale amid disputes in the Angelos family. So interesting to see that.
Yeah.
So we look ahead for the Mariners this upcoming week of September 26th through October 3rd. The Mariners play 3 games against the Texas Rangers. September 27th and 28th are all 3 days, September 28th, 27th through 29th, are 6:40 p.m. start times. September 30th versus the Athletics is a 6:40 start. October 1st and 2nd are both 1:10 p.m. first pitch time. So, again, I cannot express how important this homestand is. The closest that the team can clinch officially their playoff berth is the 29th, but they're still fighting to host playoff games. So that's what's most important here. It's going to be a fun ride. So moving on, we will look over to our Storm, who there's not too much going on, but some of our players are over playing in World Cup games. So, Bel, why don't we take a look at some of that and just like a little update?
Like you said, there are some of our players who are still remaining active in the off season. So our Seattle Storm 2022 FIBA Women's World Cup update. Ezzy McBagor had her best game of the 2022 FIBA World Cup, scoring 16 points while adding 7 rebounds, 5 blocks, and 3 steals to lead the host Australians to a huge 75-72 win over Canada, clinching a berth in the quarterfinal round. Moving on to Stephanie Talbot here. She flirted with a triple-double in the game as well, scoring 11 points while adding 9 rebounds and 8 assists. We move on to France now with Gabby Williams. She scored a game-high 16 points on 8 of 15 shooting, adding 3 rebounds, 2 steals, and an assist. The United States scored the most points ever in a World Cup game, putting up 145 in a dominating win over Korea. Brianna Stewart had 18 of those points with 3 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, and a block, all in just 14 minutes of play.
Oh, God.
And can't forget about Joel Lloyd. She tallied 4 points with 2 assists in 14 minutes as well. The two teams were tied at 21-21 with 3 minutes and 6 seconds to go in the first quarter when the United States rattled off a 23-2 run over the next 6 minutes, then outscored them 77-29 in the second half to pull away. Group play wraps up tonight and tomorrow morning, but nothing but good news here about our Storm players. So
I mean, Australia, France, and US maybe a little bit more with that win.
Yeah.
All sort of dominating. And it is really, like you were saying, with the players in the offseason keeping busy, it's good to see that they're still on a high level and that, like we looked at last week with the sort of breakout candidates Ezzy and Gabby just continuing to play at a high level. It's good to see, and obviously would like to see both of those two back in Storm colors next season.
Yes, I agree. And that about wraps up our Storm segment for this week. So we will move on to our Seattle Sounders.
So not too much happening with our Sounders here, as there's been, with the World Cup, it's a good talk about the international break. The Sounders dealing with an international break as well. Unfortunate news in injury department on the 23rd of September. Sort of the third goalkeeper on the squad, Andrew Thomas, underwent surgery. The Sounders announced that the keeper underwent a successful minimally invasive back surgery. Back stuff, scary.
Mm-hmm.
On Thursday the 22nd in Seattle. Thomas began his rehabilitation immediately following the procedure, has been out for over a month due to a lower back stress fracture. So good to know that that's been cleaned up. Thomas mainly with the sort of minor league version of the Sounders, the Tacoma Defiance, unfortunately dealing with that injury, but good to know that successful and back to rehabbing. So in other team-related notes, on the 20th, it was announced that the World Football Summit announced that Sounders FC General Manager and President of Soccer Garth Lagerwey has been named the winner of the Best Executive Award, presented by Nolan Partners, edging out fellow finalists Ivan Gazidis, the CEO of AC Milan, and Karen Brady, the Vice Chairman of West Ham United, for the honor, which is being presented at the World Football Summit Awards on September 28th in Spain. That's a little wild to think about, right? That an MLS general manager won executive award over in other clubs, just in general. Because obviously with the MLS, far behind, clubs in Europe and all that. But to see that was kind of like a whoa. Like, I know that Garth has been a big impact in building this club and seeing it through. Obviously, winning CCL is a big deal. Participating in the Club World Cup will be big, but I mean, that's pretty. I know that with recency bias, people won't may have sour opinions considering how bad the Sounders have been as of late, but to see the group that Seattle's had, that playoff run, the playoff streak, some of the turnarounds at the season, some of the value that they've got out of certain players, I mean, that speaks to a good GM. So to see that honored on a world stage, a literal world stage from the World Football Summit,
it's amazing.
That's pretty impressive. Continuing with the sort of international talk, on the 21st, it was announced that 4 additional Sounders were called up for international duty in addition to Jordan Morris with Team USA for the September window, and this is why there's this little break for the Sounders. Javier Arriaga for Ecuador, Nuhu for Cameroon, Alex Roldan for El Salvador, and Raul Ruidiaz for Peru. Unfortunately, with those last 2, tried to get official word if Ruidiaz or Alex would be back for tomorrow's matchup against Cincinnati, and I don't think that they will be.
Oh, no.
It doesn't sound like Ruidiaz will be allowed to return for that. So you're missing a big defender and your striker. So things get tougher. I mean, you can see the little banner below us. The Sounders really are facing a do or die situation. They'd effectively have to win out and then get some help from the outside to make the playoffs. So the road doesn't get much easier, unfortunately. It's just kind of like what goes wrong now? What went wrong this time? So it won't get any easier, but at the end of the day, the league won't feel sorry for you because you're missing players. I'm sure a lot of the West and just the MLS in general is kind of, I guess something I saw today was like Alabama fatigue. People get tired of certain teams winning. I'm sure people would be happy to see Seattle out of it. So it's possible. It is possible, but it starts tomorrow, the 27th, FC Cincinnati, a 7 p.m. start. Seattle sits at a 12-win, 16-loss, 3-draw record, 10th in the Western Conference. 4 points out of a playoff. I believe it's the LA Galaxy who currently hold that spot, but you got to win out, and then you need some help from the outside. So it won't be easy. But now we move over to what we talked about a little bit with Kraken preseason and training camp. I kind of have to hijack this from you a little bit.
What?
A little bit. We'll talk about training camp here. Training camp was fun. To see there's a lot of new faces with this team. There's not much like official team news for you missed a lot of that. We had a lot of team news last week,
did.
but there's no real moves going on. We do have some upcoming. We have 3 games over this upcoming week for preseason to look at, so we'll look at that. But before anything else, I want to showcase some of the shots that Live Lions got for us yesterday at training camp. See here, Brandon Tanev and Oliver Bjorkstrand. Bjorkstrand acquired from Columbus in a sort of cap casualty trade because Columbus signed one of the best wingers in free agency in Johnny Gaudreau. So Seattle benefited from that, getting a really solid winger. Young Matty Beniers here looking to win the Calder Trophy, the Rookie of the Year equivalent in the NHL. A guy, all the talent in the world, tallied 9 points in 10 games last year. Martin Jones will be really important for this Kraken team. The new backup with Chris Jieger having torn his ACL over the past past offseason, backing up Philip Grubauer. He's had his rough last few seasons, but looking to turn it around as the Kraken have a new goalkeeper coach. But I mean, Liv's like, this is my first time shooting hockey. And then you see some of this stuff is like the quality is up there with what I saw from photographers throughout the inaugural season last year.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. You guys, Matt, the photographers are all very modest. You're all, I don't think
it's not my best work.
I'm like, man, as said in the latest blog post relating to Circling Seattle Sports, we've got a really talented group of photographers that help elevate what you and I do.
Yeah. So
I'm always amazed. But bottom line, I'll get out of your segment here. I'll let you do your.
I'm just kidding.
This team should be. I don't say they're going to be there won't be in the basement, and I'm not going to guarantee playoffs, but they will win more games than they did last year.
That's good.
More scoring. We brought in some solid veterans, new goalkeeper coach. It's a lot of fun. Hockey's fun, especially when the dudes can fight and it's legal. That's fun. Come on.
Legal fights.
But I'll let you get to some other stuff here with your segment.
All we have is league news. So like you mentioned, 3 games coming up this week. We'll definitely have more next week. But September 20th news, that all falls on September 20th. 3 NHL legends announced their retirement. So Keith Yandel retires. He holds the consecutive games played record at 989. PK, I'm going to ask for your help with the last name.
Subban.
That's what I thought. Subban retires. He's 13 season veteran, 2013 Norris Trophy winner.
Subban is, I'll just say right now, Subban's one of the, with the NHL, Fitz, you and I talked about this, one of the few black players in the NHL. And I mean, 13 years as a black man in the NHL and to win the Norris Trophy, he had an impressive career. So I know that talking with Everett about it, the few black players that he saw growing up were an inspiration to him. I can only imagine that Subban was an inspiration to many, and I hope that many take after what he did, and just a happy retirement to those 2, and then
the
Chara here who retired. I mean, look at the name. Look at the 989 consecutive games, and then was Zdeno Chara 224 seasons.
Yeah,
that's longer than I've been alive.
Yes. That's our third, Zdeno Chara. 24 seasons played, set record for most games at defenseman.
24 seasons.
That's that's a toll on your body.
That's most of your life. That's longer than I've been alive. This is a lot of time on the ice.
Yes.
Yeah.
So like you said, happy retirement to all 3 of these guys. And then that about wraps it up. We'll look ahead here. September 26th versus the Edmonton Oilers. That's a 7 p.m. start. The 27th versus the Calgary Flames. And that's also a 7 p.m. start. And then on the 29th at the Vancouver Canucks for a 6:30 p.m. start.
Hockey's back. Hockey back.
Officially,
Yay.
first preseason game today. That's exciting.
Might be preseason, but I'll take it.
Yeah.
Take it. We look over here, and I'm sorry for hijacking your segment. We look over here to our OL Reign here, who I know we were talking about it last week. They were facing a 3-game road trip, a tough 3-game road trip to essentially head you into the final stretch of the regular season, and they came out of 9 total points possible. They came out with 9. I will admit I didn't fully expect it. I expected maybe a draw here or there, but they came and they took care of business. So
yeah, they did.
September 20th at New York, New Jersey, Gotham, a 1-0 win. So they squeezed that one by. It was a close one. Player of the game forward, Megan Rapinoe. We talked about Megan, an 8.4 match rating, 1 goal, 2 chances created, and 3 total shots. This was off of a set piece, and Megan continues to be a really big contributor in these big moments and continues to help the Reign in a form. I don't know if we've seen it in her club career. This has really helped push this team, and it's just amazing contribution towards the end of the season. You know, I remember at the end of at some point last year, my uncle goes, I think Jess Fishlock's a little long in the tooth, meaning I think she's a little old. Jess Fishlock wins MVP. I know that you and I think have had discussions, maybe Megan retires since Sue's retired this year.
And look at her now.
And I think we've talked about it before, but I don't think Megan plans to retire this year. But we look over to the final game of 3 on the road. So the first 2 games, that the team played, North Carolina and Gotham, those teams they've got their talent, but they're not as good as Houston. Houston near the top of the table for a bit. Houston handing the Reign their first loss at home this year, late into the season. And so it's a good test. Houston was without their best player, Ebony Salmon, but still, it's a good club. It's a good test for you to round out the road trip. And the Reign won in a little bit of a surprising fashion, 2-0. Player of the game forward, Veronica Latsko, an 8.2 match rating, 1 goal, 3 total shots, 1 chance created. Latsko scores her first NWSL regular season goal. Yes, I believe it's regular season goal. I think it's 8th overall. A 2-0 win. Again, this was like, I did not expect you to win like that against Houston. Shut out Houston. And I don't know. I was just pretty taken aback because the Reign have had their struggles just putting away chances. They've had frustrating losses, frustrating ties. I mean, we look at their ties. They've got 7 on the year.
Yeah.
If they take away some of those or even make a couple of those losses ties, I mean, they'd have the 1 seed and they probably wouldn't have to worry about it and win the NWSL Shield. But so the Reign remain undefeated in their last 6 road games, outscoring their hosts 11-5 in those meetings. Finished that road trip with 3-game week with 9 points. The only team to accomplish that sort of feat this season. The match, it was weird because the Reign, they've got a lot of talent and they move it around. The starting 11 that you saw against Houston was the 20th different starting 11 in 21 games. So it's a lot of moving around. Bethany Balser scored the first goal in the 29th minute against Houston. Now 6, tied with Megan Rapinoe for the most on the team. But since entering the league in 2019, the year she won Rookie of the Year, the 25-year-old has 21 goals all time in the regular season, which is 2nd in the league. There's a lot of star power on this team. And I don't know if there's a better time to do it, but I talked about with ticket giveaways. We're not done with those 4 Mariners tickets. 2 tickets to this Saturday is the first, I believe, right?
Yes.
Saturday against the Orlando Pride. This is the final regular season game. The Reign had the chance to win the NWSL Shield, which is basically given to the team who has the most points at the end of the year. They've clinched a playoff berth with that win against Houston. They clinch a playoff berth, so they're making the playoffs no matter what. So they're the first team amongst the sort of 3 that we've been looking at over the past few weeks since the Storm were eliminated that have needed to clinch, Mariners, Sounders, Reign. And there's world-class talent in this team. I know when they had their press conference to announce that they were moving to Lewin Field, they said world-class talent at a world-class facility. And it's been true the entire year. Megan Rapinoe, a lot of people know the Reign because of Megan Rapinoe. Megan's been living up to that. You've got, we could go over the roster. We'd be here forever, though. But it's just been really impressive to watch this all take place.
And you can too.
Yes, you can too. Yes. Okay. Sorry. Let me go over it again. Let me recenter. So 2 tickets to the game on the 1st of October against the Orlando Pride. I'm going to make sure that's lower bowl, obviously, but there's some tickets in like the 3rd row. So I'm going to look at that. But yeah, so 2 tickets to the Reign game against the Orlando Pride on October 1st. It's the fan appreciation match, I believe, as well, with a 7:00 start. So if you don't want to go to the Mariners game, you don't care, the Reign play at 7:00 that night. Their traffic will be gone by then. Well, I know that,
Hopefully.
yeah, there was some traffic woes this past week, so I
There
don't want to
totally
jinx
was.
anything. But no, I mean, they're Laura Harvey and the club itself have already encouraged people to get out and buy tickets to this game. They're not expensive. If you're worried about the tickets, they're not expensive. You can get tickets for as low as $20, which is pretty decent for the talent that you're watching on the field. And we'll be giving away 2 anyway. So again, just like with the Mariners, make sure you're following us. Instagram's at Circling Seattle Sports, Twitter at Circling Sports, Facebook, or like Matt has just dropped it, Facebook, Circling Seattle Sports, to be able to see how that's all going to go down. But I'll probably just make sure you're following us, and we'll go from there. So yeah, that was a really impressive road trip. And so the Reign now sit at second in the NWSL table. They were first after the win against Houston, but Portland won. So now they've jumped up to first. Point being is that the Reign can win the NWSL Shield, and that can become official, I believe, against Orlando. So again, they're making the playoffs regardless. You don't have to be on the edge of your seat on Saturday worrying about that. So that's, yes, it's very exciting. We look at injury reports against Gotham and Houston. They're the same. They're all the season-ending injury players. Angelina, Tobin Heath, Sinclair Miramontes, Jody Okekel, all season-ending injuries. So outside of those, relatively clean, which is good to see. On the 20th against Gotham, 2 players hit some milestones. Sofia Huerta hit 150 regular season appearances. So congratulations to Sofia on that. And then the same day, Quinn hit 50 regular season appearances. So congratulations to Quinn on that as well. We look over to a little bit of league-related news here on the 19th. The San Diego Wave thrashed the previous NWSL regular season attendance record. San Diego welcomes 32,000 people to their match against Angel City, the largest crowd in NWSL history, showing the strides that the league is making. So I've talked about it before, and I know that there's like the West Coast rivalry a little bit. They're an expansion team. You got to build a rivalry. But it's really exciting to just see what this does for the league, see these sort of crowds that they're drawing, and just how impressive that has been. So that's really cool to see, and hoping to see that sort of thing change throughout the league. So with team record and standings, the Reign sit at 10 wins, 4 losses, 7 draws on the year, 37 points. They have secured a playoff berth. They're second in the NWSL table, 1 point behind Portland for first. Looking ahead, as mentioned several times, their next match is October 1st versus the Orlando Pride with a 7 p.m. start. I know it says 1. I hit the wrong button. I apologize. It's a 7 p.m. start against Orlando at Lumen Field. You've got the chance. 2 tickets we're going to give away for that, so you can be there in person. So this is normally where we go to Seattle Star of the Week.
But
there's a good amount of Seawolves news to look over. So, Bel, why don't we look at, I mean, it feels like they're trying to retool the roster a little bit.
It does, yeah. We have quite a bit of roster moves here. So on September 16th, Travis Larson was traded to the Toronto Arrows for salary cap relief. Larson grew up in New Zealand and began his rugby career there. The dual nationality player for Canada and New Zealand alike has been a member of the Canada A side and full-time training environment for many years, just shy of the 2019 Rugby Canada World Cup squad. On the 21st, Brad Tucker is traded to Rugby New York for salary cap relief. Tucker boasts a lengthy resume of experience from multiple New Zealand sides. On the 22nd, the team signs hooker Peter Malcolm to a 3-year deal. Malcolm is an experienced addition to the Seawolves front row with 41 MLR appearances to his name. Malcolm flourished through the USA age grade pathway, starting with the US U20s, selected as a collegiate All-American 3 times, captained the USA Selects, and has represented the Eagles on the senior stage 11 times. On the 23rd, a couple of moves here. Hooker Sean McNulty released, acquired via trade with the LA Giltinis 5 months ago for cash considerations. And lock Ben Mitchell signed to a 3-year deal as well. Mitchell is a MLR original, already surpassing 50 appearances after consistent selections with Austin in 2018-2019 and San Diego in 2020-2022, respectively. The lock was brought into the USA Selects in 2021 after growth in MLR, including all MLR first team in 2018 and second team in 2019 selections. That was a mouthful.
Yeah, a few mouthfuls. It's just looking at some of the accolades for Malcolm and Mitchell. Someone made the point, James Malcolm, his brother played with Seattle last year, so maybe we see the brothers. A lot of accolades for Malcolm and Mitchell. The two M's there, I guess, but just really interesting to see that, with Tucker and Larson and McNulty traded for. McNulty was released. I think it was tough to read the media. I think McNulty was traded to acquire Mitchell, and then Mitchell signed a 3-year deal. It was a little bit confusing. Okay. It was like a sign and trade kind of thing. Yeah. But with Tucker and Larson, you trade for salary cap relief, and then you use that relief to give Malcolm and Mitchell that money. It's really interesting because, again, this is a Seawolves team that, like we said during the playoff run, it doesn't really matter to me how far they go because they got in. They had a good year. They had a better year than they had the last 2 years. Yeah. It seems like they want to build off of that success with some veterans and just kind of reload as opposed to anything else. So I don't know. The acquisition of Mitchell kind of excited me more than Malcolm because, no, both of them are really exciting to me just because of their veteran pedigree. Yeah. But I don't know. I'll be interested to see how that plays out. And it seems like more of a reload kind of thing, kind of bolster that roster here. You'll be without record heading for sort of the orderly part of it because of the suspension. But, over the course of a decently long season, I think these guys will really help some of the younger guys get better, as well as just have more of I think it's a better group than what you've got, considering as the team added players throughout the season and now adding in the offseason. So solid that we can finally get some Seawolves news.
And a solid roster there for the Seawolves. So excited to see what they can do this season. That about wraps up our Seawolves. So for now, we move on to Seattle Star of the Week. And I piggybacked off of you. I'm sure you noticed, but it's so hard not to when it feels like the old Rain are just like getting hot at the right time.
And that we've talked about that for so many teams, whether it's the Storm or the Mariners, hopefully, or the Sounders. But yes, the Rain are our unanimous Stars of the Week. I mean, that road trip was big to get all of those points. Again, I think we talked about it after the comeback against Angel City. There are certain games where, at least to me, whether that's whatever league it is, NFL, MLB, certain games tell you this team has what it takes to reach a championship, let alone win it. And, that Angel City match made me feel that way. This Houston match kind of shows to me, that you can do the same. So, you've got a lot of talent. Obviously, losing Tobin sucks. It felt like she was kind of coming along as a veteran. Miramontes defensively losing that depth is bad. Angelina has been a creative midfielder and just been really solid as an attacker. Losing her earlier in the year sucked as well, but it just seems like, as we talked about with Megan, you've got some people on hot streaks right now. You've got the veteran leadership. You've got talent from all over, whether it's rookies contributing to players like Megan. It just feels like the right time. So absolutely have one more match to deal with after they come home here, but seems like they're hitting a decent amount of stride here. And it was, considering the struggles with the first two teams that we covered, the Storm are in the offseason, the Sounders had an off week, Kraken like training camp, kind of seemed like a really obvious selection anyway. Yeah. So
I tried really funneling it and trying to find that actual star, just individual. And I could have very well picked Megan Rapinoe for how well she's doing. But it really it didn't feel fair to give all of the credit to one person when, like you said, the talent level is so high on the team.
Yeah, hard to disagree with that, but just really exciting to see the form that they're on and that they're the first of the currently 3 active teams Yes, technically 4 now with the Kraken starting up, but
Yeah.
to make their playoffs. So will be exciting for that as well. Obviously, we talk about the Mariners homestand, but we'll obviously be there for every rain match as well. And we encourage you to be to do the same, whether it's you win our tickets that we're going to have available or that you go and actually support these women in general. If you talk about supporting women in sports, show up to the games. That's all I got to say about it. So with that being said, I only used that like 2 times this episode, right?
Good job.
Yay. Shout out, Matt. We will wrap up as we're approaching the final week of September. We're going to be in October. How bizarre does that feel?
Vibes already?
Oh, boy. Are we going to have like Halloween decorations in here? Is that what we're going to do? Hopefully the rain can be spooky in the playoffs. Ooh.
Good one.
Our Seahawks look to Detroit, heading on the road for their week 4 matchup. The Mariners have I cannot stress how important that homestand is. The Storm, we'll continue to keep up with the World Cup updates from our Storm players. The Sounders face a big test in Cincinnati, which they will effectively, I keep saying it every week, is a must win.
But they really are.
The Kraken play 3 preseason games, so we'll have some updates for you and some scores there. The Reign have a final regular season match of the regular season, to play, and the Seawolves may make some more noise. So we'll keep you on that. Regardless, make sure you're following us on social media for that news. If you want to be updated, there's nobody doing it like Bel and I, at least reporter-wise. Photographer-wise, that's their credit. I'm not going to take their credit. We've got some of the best photographers. I broke my pen in the country, let alone the city. And there's nobody covering it like us. And you can earn some tickets as well. So until we see you this upcoming Monday on the 3rd of October, make sure you're following us on social media to get more updates on those tickets and how you can win those, as well as making sure that you do everything you can to make today a great day.